All right, welcome everybody. So we are at 4 o'clock. We are going to kind of start. If you're still getting in and joining at the moment, don't worry, you won't miss anything important. It's just me talking. Just wanted to welcome everyone for joining us for the Artificial Intelligence in the Department of the Navy conversation today. We are going to have some fantastic panelists for you guys to listen to and ask questions of. A little bit real quick from NavalX. For NavalX, we like to host these kinds of conversations. We are not trying to reinvent anything. We're not taking over AI. We want to just help facilitate the conversations and the work that you guys do throughout the Department of the Navy. And one way we can do that is through these webcast events. So if you are interested in doing something like this, let us know, or other ways we can help you. We can do that. A little bit about NavalX. If you're not aware, we're an organization across the Department of the Navy that is made up of folks just like you. And we are, myself, I come from Weapons Division out in China Lake. We've got teammates from all over the country, from Syscom's Warfare Centers, Active Duty Navy and Marine Corps. So kind of a diverse team. And today we have some fantastic folks from across the Department of the Navy. I'm going to let Ashley talk to more of that. Otherwise, a couple reminders for some cleanup things is if you'd like during this webinar, if you want to ask a question, the Q&A, please use the Q&A section, and those questions will be answered by the panelists, either by type or the question will be brought up verbally and asked to the entire group. Also, we have the chat function. If you're in Zoom, we have the chat function and you're able to chat to participants and attendees alike. If you are watching us via YouTube, once I'm done here talking to the group and welcoming you all, I will jump over to YouTube and monitor YouTube. So any questions that come in the comment sections there, I will feed them into the Zoom here from that point. Otherwise, we appreciate having you all. We're excited for this great conversation. Ashley, over to you.
Thanks, Mohawk Matt. So since we have a short amount of time with you guys, I'm just going to introduce you guys to the people who are on the call today or on the webinar today. And my coworkers are going to be dropping their bios and ways to communicate with them in the chat. So on the panel today, we have Brett Vaughn from the Office of Naval Research. We have Douglas Lang from the Naval Information Warfare Center Pacific. We have Robert Kiesler from the Naval Information Warfare Center Atlantic. We have Susan Marciano with Naval Air Warfare Center Weapons Division. We have Charles Ray from the Naval Air Warfare Center Aircraft Division. We have Karen Freck from Naval Air Systems Command's Digital Group at headquarters. We have Ken Ford from Naval Supply Systems Commands. And we also have Robert Liu from Naval Surface Warfare Center Corona. So welcome, you guys. Really want to thank you guys for joining us on the panel today. We're going to go ahead and get started up with our discussion. So I want to start off with Brett. Brett, in your view, what is the biggest challenges that artificial intelligence is facing today in the Navy?
Thanks, Ashley. And let me just start off by thanking everybody, especially at NavalX, the whole team there, and everybody that dialed in to participate. It's a pretty exciting and important time in the Navy. All over the world, AI is transforming just about every aspect of life, and Navy and naval operations are no exception. So the onus is on us to figure out how to maximize this advanced technology to the best degree we can. If you're not familiar, you know, the Navy's been steeped in AI for decades, since the inception of the discipline, mostly in the science and technology community, but our greatest challenges today really lie in the adoption and adaptation and application of all that hard, good work. A lot of that work, that I should say, has been the work that the successes you see in industry today are standing on the shoulders of. So it's very important. But how we shift to improve our ability to adapt and apply AI is critical for us now. And from my perspective, as the Navy Chief AI Officer, this is mostly a cultural campaign for me. I see most of our challenges and the solutions to those challenges in culture, in the way we operate, and the way we need to operate and act stands in stark contrast to the way we've operated and acted over the last few years. It's the difference between industrial and digital. Those cultural changes that we need to make touch organization, process, technology, and data. And all of those 4 areas, 4 gears need to come into contact effectively with one another in the pursuit of effective AI application. That is critical. And I know the concentration of today's discussion is data, but I would ask everybody to please keep in mind as we discuss the data questions and issues, the context is critical for AI. With AI, for me, context is everything. It's how you take a very complex topic like AI and you bring meaning to it. And meaning is only brought to it when it's brought into relevant context. So with that, I would ask you, as we talk about data, to think about the other components that comprise an AI ecosystem, the transport, the compute, the models, the algorithms, and many other pieces that need to come into play to fuel or enable an AI capability. If we do that, if we keep relevant context, we will move more swiftly to meaningful answers. And I think we can start to move the needle on AI application. For those that are in the Navy or work for the Navy, I'd ask you think of the ASNRDA 4Ds, right? Decentralize, digitize, differentiate, and develop AI talent. And that last one's critical. It's very important. Obviously, people are at the center. They're going to drive this. A lot of the folks that have the best horizon and bubble on critical AI skill sets in the Navy are on this panel today. You're going to hear from them. So I'm thrilled for that. But I just wanted to let you folks know that and give you a high level view that in everything we're doing now, I think we can make headway, but we have to act and think just a little differently than we have in the past. Because if you've ever worked in the Pentagon or worked with the Pentagon or had to do business with the Pentagon, it's not an entity that's known for moving fast or flexibly. And that is absolutely what is necessary for us to be effective in the AI trade space. So we're trying to change that. We're trying to shift course as a service. And I'm hoping that this event will be a key enabler and catalyst to that end. So with that, I'll turn it over to the panel and Ashley, and I look forward to a great session today. Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate it. So I'm going to ask one of the first questions. So we had a couple of questions that I see are popping up in the chat. And so for those that are just joining us, again, we have a question and answer function that we have 8 different panelists on here today that are going to be taking and answering your questions, and we're going to be asking some verbally. I want to take some time to ask the first question I have for the panelists. Since machine learning is a part of artificial intelligence, what do our DoN data scientists need to make machine learning a reality for our sailors and Marines? So how do our DoN scientists know like what AI problems there are like in the Navy and Marine Corps? And any one of the panelists can chime in if they have the answer.
So this is Susan. I don't know that we have like a global backlog that we can go to of what those mission needs are. And that operational context to what the problem space is also crucial. And having that subject matter expertise to even think we could tackle the problem is another aspect to that question.
So I'll second that and add a little, couple notes there. It's exactly as Susan said, we don't have a centralized repository of problems that AI is particularly going to solve for the Navy, but the subject matter experts who are interacting with our AI counterparts, for example, at NOC-AD, we provide acquisition talent to acquire, research and developing, testing, evaluating, and acquiring the warfighter assets, NAVAIR's mission, NOC-AD's mission. Through those interactions with the program offices, we are aware of the mission gaps and needs. And through the interaction with the laboratories, able to provide that expertise that says, hey, you guys have this problem in your mission. We believe we can address it with this, these components from AI.
Yes, that's usually, I think that's like a commonality between like some of the other technologies too, you know, without actually having like that that database to say, hey, these are the problems that you guys need to solve. Because I think when I first started in my career a little over 10 years ago, I was saying the same thing, like, hey, they came to me, they said to your project sponsors, okay, make some ideas and put out some proposals. And I was like, okay, well, where's the list of ideas so I can start tackling them? So I think it's like, it's the same thing. Like, we don't really have that group together to say, hey, these are all the problems. But yeah, so if so I mean that brings up something really good. So I guess like if the program offices want artificial intelligence, they usually focus on just how to define it, which is really hard. So if they don't know how to define it and we don't really have that database, where should program sponsors focus when working on data science with data scientists to surface what the AI needs are?
So Ashley, let me take a shot at that. So and this is kind of at a high level, I admit, but we have a set of near-term AI priority issues that we're working that are anchored in the CNO's design for maritime superiority 2.0. We are working against those, and as we do, remember I mentioned it's the answer and the formula for our attack, our approach is part organization, process, technology, and data. So as we go after those problems, we are bringing in the requirements folks, the acquisition folks, the contracting folks, the test evaluation folks, all the critical elements of the team, the domain experts, the AI experts, right? We are cognizant of a very rich pool of AI equipped folks in the naval R&D enterprise. And we tap into that base regularly. So if anybody is in search of a list of high priority issues, they can always come to me and I will socialize those with you. At the lower levels, our intent is that AI becomes the commander's business, right? We envision AI seeping into just about every aspect of Navy business. So at some level, there are issues and problems and challenges fueled by AI that won't make it up to the 3 and 4 stars in the Pentagon, and certainly could be handled at the local levels. But I will tell you, at the higher levels, we have that list we're working on against. We also have a Navy and a Marine Corps AI governance board that is fielding some, but not all of the issues, because I will tell you there are a ton out there. But we do, and we are growing an AI governance structure. Again, it's part of our cultural adaptation, right? We're at the beginning phases of how to learn how to adopt AI, and getting a good management and organizational structure is a key piece of that. So you can always default to me. I'm always ready to answer anybody's questions if they're engaged and earnest and really intent on getting the answers. Over.
Thank you. I think this question might be somewhat related. This is actually from one of the users. How is the Navy approaching and thinking about AI testing, validation, and security prior to procurement or deployment?
So I'll start on that one again. So as you probably guessed, and as probably everybody on this call can surmise, the testing and evaluation for AI will be very different from the traditional test and evaluation we're all used to. In the most generic terms, where T&E is usually a one-time event before a product or a system goes from the lab to the field. For AI, it's going to be a continual iterative process. Think of the DevOps loop, the infinity loop on its side there. All the elements are done and then redone and redone and redone and redone. T&E is a critical piece of that cycle. So the details, how that's going to work, again, another learning process. I can tell you that at the department level, we're critically focused on that, and the conversation is going on. It's one of the harder challenges, I will tell you. It's just if you just try and think about how you T&E something that gets better or changes after fielding, you can just you can start to imagine all the difficulty with it. But we are certainly focused on it, and it is a priority. But we're learning.
Hey, I wanted to add to that. I think Brett caught it right there. It's a cultural shift for us. I mean, from a T&E perspective, we field an item and then we go and test it. For AI, since the technologies and the capabilities evolve as they're being developed, it is really a cultural shift into a full continuous implementation, continuous delivery type model. That we have to adjust from not only how we do work and how we do things, we need to adjust that from contracting, legal perspective. We have to change things from an acquisition level. And for most of us here, we have to kind of do things differently on the data level as well. So we might want to do things like take lessons learned from the model-based systems engineering approach, where you're pulling data as the design data into all aspects right from the beginning, so that when you're going out to do T&E, you're not having to recreate the design documents from scratch because you have that data pulled in directly from the designers. Okay, that's it for me.
The additional complication for T&E with AI, in particular, when machine learning is being used to develop models, is that it's not a settled science on how to do that T&E. The tools that we have available to us in software engineering, or more traditional software, took decades of research before those forms of T&E were settled upon and built into tools. That research is going on right now in academic settings, at places like NIWC Pacific and others. One has to look at not only such things as the data that's been selected for training models, because of looking for factors such as bias in the data, but one also has to look at how the models developed. So there are tools being developed in the academic communities at the moment for doing almost the equivalent of code tracing, branch checking that you see in software engineering. Similar types of checking are occurring in neural nets, but it's still in the area of academic research. And so we're going to be evolving the test and evaluation, especially for the use of AI in mission critical applications over the next several years as the science improves and we can spin that into engineering practices for the Navy.
Okay. Here's a question that I'd like to see if someone can take a stab at answering. Are we working with DOT's efforts to improve data collection for quantitative analysis? Is it hard to get the right data without clear objectives and a data collection plan? So again, that question is, are we working with DOT's efforts to improve data collection for quantitative analysis? It's hard to get the right data without clear objectives and a data collection plan.
So this is Susan. I don't know that I can exactly answer that question. Here's what came up for me as a result of that question, though. fundamentally, we need to shift how we view data. We need to be creating data streams where the data can flow like in a stream or a river. So it can pull off and subdivide and merge back in based on data needs. Right now, we're not structured to support a natural evolution of data and have it branch back in and break apart. We aren't structured for sharing the data. And that gets even more difficult because we are not giving a compelling reason on why people should make their data available to us. To be able to say that it's for the good of the community or we can give you great solutions, that's not going to be real effective. We need to figure out new ways of talking about it and that return on that investment, because it is a long-term investment.
Yeah, and I'll just echo Susan there. That is one of the reasons that CNO recently created the Navy Office of Digital Transformation. That office is intended in part to create that digital thread or digital highway or river that Susan's talking about at the enterprise level, or at least help the organization set the conditions to be able to do that, because she's absolutely spot on. We have a lot of AI work going on throughout the Navy right now. But unless we attack the condition, the environment that Susan mentioned at the enterprise level, we won't be able to scale it. And scaling is the key here. It's one of the primary priorities for us. So yeah, absolutely right, Susan.
Because of the times right now, I wanted to bring this question because in the light of this pandemic, it says COVID has created havoc within most commercial AI systems. When system one thinking, irrational instinct overrides past rational patterns, AI tends to fail. So how would you guys, or how would one of you guys account for all system one data? So we're talking about SOCOM, Air Force, Army, and State about a new data point source for system one data. Is there a comparable Navy entry point? If I need to, I know I talk kind of fast sometimes. If I need to repeat the question, just let me know.
Well, I think we have to get a little more information from the person who's asking the question. System one and system two, in the references that I'm familiar with, talk about the difference between information that you respond to immediate decision making, and deliberative decision making. And I don't think there's anything about what we've seen in COVID that's made me believe there's any difference in what's going on. AI fails when the models that have been developed are not able to handle information that comes in, typically because it's been out of sample from the training data, and that's a known issue, and it's an issue that is an area of research to try to improve practices in order to be able to make machine learned models more robust to variance in the data. Often we'll use other types of models for more deliberative planning, though, and those have the advantage of including some non-learned behaviors from symbolic models, and because those tend to be slower in response. So if the question is, are we going to start using more of the latter and less of the former, I don't think that's true. But I do think we're going to be continuing to look at the research to try to improve models' ability to be robust to distribution in the data.
Just wanted to let the panelists know we're going to be queuing up some more of the questions for you guys. And if you guys want to take an opportunity to like type in some of the answers. Be my guest, because there's a little bit over 30 questions. So I know we're not gonna get to all of them in time. But let's talk a little bit more about the data. I wanted to see who helps data scientists find the data. Where or how do we get the needed data? How do we keep the current data, and then who will maintain it? Pretty much just summarizing, it's like, how do we make sure it's accessible, but not subject to being manipulated or corrupted?
So this is Rob Kiesler. I just wanted to, so the Navy is taking an approach where data is the foundation of what we need to do. And we're really trying to push some centralized systems to collect the various data sources that we have. Our chief data officer and his staff have been doing a great job of putting message out to all of us on better practices for that, because it's very inconsistent. I mean, data is everywhere. We're not as digitally mature as we probably should be in the Navy, and I think that's definitely something that we need to work on, and where we definitely need help, and we need programs and others to really step up. One of the earlier questions was programs, and they need to work on how they're funding and influencing the data in their systems.
This is Karen. So one of the things that we looked at was building data repositories and having a data governance system where we can manage the data. When we start cataloging it, we can build metadata around that data so users can find it, and also provide the layers of security that we already talked about, so that you can trust when you put your data into a system that is protected, that you understand user access requirements and things like that, and privilege data that you can see or you can't see. We have an initiative that's across our syscoms. It's called the Universal Data Hub. So it's kind of like a Kaggle, like a government Kaggle system, where you have data sets that are cataloged into the data hub, so that data scientists across the Navy can access that data and build machine learning models, build AI, and use the infrastructure of that to communicate and collaborate with each other. So some of the problems with AI is that there's so many different areas of it, like natural language processing. And we have regression models and decision trees, and routines that we build that can actually learn, like reinforcement learning systems and deep neural nets and things like that. Not everyone's an expert in every single thing, but we do find is that we have a lot of scientists that really have built skills around what they've learned. They've been working in data a long time, and they want to collaborate with each other and work together to build the next generation of AI or machine learning capability. But how do we do that if we can't find each other and we can't find a point of contact for the data that we need? So if we're interested in cyber data, we can go into a data hub and type in cyber, and then it will return all of the data sets that are related to cyber and the point of contacts, and maybe even a description about the data, what it is and where it came from. And then you can get in touch with those people and hopefully, join together and build new projects, work together, find additional resources. Maybe you're a sponsor looking for someone to solve a problem for you. You would be able to go into the system and find someone that's doing similar like work that you're looking for and be able to connect. And so I think having a collaborative area where we can all go and find each other and collaborate and communicate is, the way that we need to go in the future.
I like that question. I like your answer to that question, because I kind of was going to lead into the other one about like bringing the community together. And I think now in recent times, like it was so hard, at least from certain syscoms, to go to conferences. And now we're doing a lot of things digitally. Just like I was going to see, like, do you guys have, because I know that in our previous telecons, we were talking about the NAML conference. But yeah, what are some of the other avenues that are already in place for the artificial intelligence community to get together? Like, how can different commands, data analysis get more involved with the bigger Department of the Navy picture?
Hey, Ashley, there's one of the biggest ones in addition to NAML that I'll point out, and I would like everybody to be aware of, is the Cruiser initiative out at the Naval Postgraduate School. Cruiser is an acronym, the Consortium for Robotics and Unmanned Systems education and research. And it's a great community. It involves academia, industry, and government coming together in a very cool place, by the way, to noodle at some of the harder problems and challenges. But it's a terrific environment and community, and it's funded by a lot of organizations I'm directly involved with. So I am biased, but in addition to NAML and the data analytics conference that happens on the East Coast, where NAML happens usually on the West Coast, I think those are really three big key areas and forums that even the industry and academic partners can be involved with. So want to make sure everybody's aware of that.
And this is Rob again. There's also a very active data science and analytics community within the workforce. We actually have embraced our move to Teams and have moved a lot of our networking and collaboration there. But that network has tech talks, they share research, they share project ideas, they share problem statements. And it's a great forum for analysts and engineers within the Navy to participate with their peers. And I mean, it has hundreds of people across the Navy participating actively.
I want to go ahead and take a question from YouTube. So we actually have, we're live streaming through Zoom and also YouTube. Are technologies such as blockchain, redundant backups, distributed systems on the cloud microservice, on the cloud/microservices being looked at to be used for data management, AI, ML, a tool as service? So let me read that question one more time because I got tongue twisted. Are technologies such as blockchain, redundant backups, distributed systems in the cloud/microservices being looked at to be used for data management, AI, ML, or tools for other services?
So the answer is yes, all of the above.
That's the easy one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I have to do that for NOC 80 as well. Yes, the Department of Navy is using and leveraging cloud services, distributed systems to deploy the technology.
Another one from YouTube. What are the thoughts regarding how human and machine decision-making loop will function? What if the human or machine gets compromised, specifically if all the systems are connected? Yeah, what will happen if those things get compromised?
So it's another really interesting area of research that's going on. We often call this human autonomy teaming, and we look at it both from the standpoint of training the models and from executing the systems. So there's a great piece of research on how do you develop models that are understandable by humans, and so that they can step in and recognize when the system is working properly and when it is not working properly. So there's a lot of research going on in explainable AI associated with that. One interesting project that we did was using a technique called neuroevolution. In neuroevolution, the model evolves generation by generation in computation, and typically that's strictly done using math for the fitness function in determining what survives in each generation. And we did some research where we actually had humans serve as the fitness function every so many generations in order to see if we could get models that would be more recognizable to human decision makers. And sure enough, in the research, this was joint research between NIWA Pacific and University of Central Florida. Sure enough, humans were able to pick out the models that had human involvement in developing them. So if an autonomous vehicle exhibited behaviors, they were more likely to recognize whether or not that behavior was a good one or a bad one. because they could recognize the type of behaviors better. So there's a fair amount of research in that area. It's an area that's active, not just at our center, but certainly at all the other centers and in academia. It's a young area of the science.
Okay, this is another question. I really like I added this function for people to be able to vote up questions. I guess if multiple people have this question. Here's a question that's at the top. How do you see the Navy budgeting for AI? Will it be backed into the existing product budgets, or do you see it more agnostic to the platform and sensors?
So I'll take a shot at that. I think you're going to see a little of both. AI it's almost impossible to extract AI from the capability of program that it's improving or advancing or working with. It's inextricably embedded. So there's going to be a large degree of funding that's coming from the gaining programmer capability. That said, though, as I started out with, there's a large culture piece here, right? And the way we fund traditional platform hardware focused programs isn't necessarily the way we need or should fund AI in every respect. With that, the Department of Defense has actually recognized this. If you're probably most of the folks on this call, if they're dialed in, they're aware of the Defense Innovation Board SWAP report, the Software Acquisition Process report, which goes into detail on a lot of the software-centric moves we need to be making. One of them is relief from the traditional budget authorities and resourcing gates that we need to pass through to fund programs, and setting up a software-specific color of money or line of resourcing. It's in the prototype stages now, but I am certainly an advocate for that moving out of the prototype stage and being part of our standard kit in the Pentagon for resourcing projects and efforts like not just AI, but anything that's heavily digitally based or software focused, any of the other exponential technologies.
Okay. What are some near-term Navy priorities for AI as it relates to personnel and recruiting? Are there pilots or initiatives underway or being planned for?
Yes. I wish I could go into a lot of specifics on this call. I just am not at liberty to. I could tell you that in our approach, it covers all warfare areas. It covers corporate or business back office applications, and absolutely it covers personnel. And as Rob said, AI talent management and focus is a very significant emergent priority for us now, because we are and all the services I think are recognizing that we need to up our game there, and in the identification, protection, and retention of those critical AI skill sets.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that question because I know when we were having our pre-planning meetings for this, that seemed to be a question or like a problem that was like in the that we had discussed as potentially having discussions about here. So thank you for answering that. So here's another question. Can someone speak to the potential vulnerabilities and sensitivities in the data that we use? For example, data poisoning or concept drift.
Well, that's data poisoning, for instance, is a very critical problem for us to look at. There are several different areas, as I mentioned earlier, within the analyzing the data that are important for evaluating models that are developed to ensure that they are of high quality. Not all models will be susceptible to the same kinds of attacks, because the different ways of developing models each have their own vulnerabilities and each have their own strengths. And we have to continue to follow the research, but begin to develop essentially an engineering practice catalog, much like engineering disciplines have had for a long time. So when we see certain types of problems, we should be looking for certain kinds of models and certain kinds of approaches to dealing with the data. Clearly, part of our evaluation process has to be to analyze the data that was used to train the models.
And you know, a certain amount of discipline as we're building up infrastructure and sort of redoing the plumbing behind all the data according to the CDO's office's strategy. We ought to be paying attention to looking at new ways of securing it and validating and verifying all that data. So.
This is Susan. If I could go back to the skills piece for a minute. So there's something about that we need to recognize. It's going to be a longer term investment. It's going to be more than training. And it's going to end up being personalized, because what we're going to learn is the breadth and depth of what we need for AI skills. I mean, there's going to be multiple experts in multiple areas, that there isn't going to be the small team that can handle it all. So we need to think about how we're going to do learning as well as development opportunities, and make the work and compensation engaging enough where they don't just work a couple of years and move on. That's going to be a huge thing that we're going to be working at a Navy level in order to be successful. That also implies that we're going to have to form partnerships with academia and contractors in order to make this work. Sorry, I just felt the need to share that.
No, thank you. Don't be sorry. I appreciate you for chiming in.
Hey, Susan, that's a great point. You know, like someone asked a question about COVID, like, does it change the landscape? I think definitely for recruitment, it's demonstrated to us that we can work differently. We can do distance training and learning. We can do collaboration in multiple different ways, and we all are able to adapt. And these are some of the basic sort of new workforce style qualities that I think the newer recruits are coming in with these AI skills that have been built in, and they're you know, they're looking for those types of work environments, and maybe we can move out of our traditional, you know, sort of habit set ways of working and adopt these new ways. COVID may have actually helped us with that.
I agree. One of the things I think it helped is that I never actually was a teleworker before, because I just like to be in the office. I'm definitely a people person, if you guys couldn't tell. But I don't miss the traffic. So I don't miss the commuting, and I don't miss the traffic. My commute is literally 5 minutes from bed to brushing teeth to my desk. So I wanted to ask a question. This one actually did get answered, but I wanted to ask it for you guys to answer verbally. It was a question on how we see RPA working with AI and ML. How do you see robotic process automation fitting into the AI ML initiatives? I think, Ken, this is a little bit up your alley.
Yeah. So over at NavSup, we're implementing robotics process automation. We're actually working a lot with NavAir and FC, and also with DLA. A lot of the stuff we're seeing when it comes to robotics process automation, and you know, RPA is basically, you know, it's a glorified macro in a way, where you record steps, it goes, it copies what the interaction of a user would be, and going performing these actions. We're moving from attended bots into unattended. You know, we see some developments in AI where some of the vendors are making the object recognition smarter, where it's actually able to look at images and capture that better, where it's actually looking at a text and making some better decisions off of that. But again, one of the big things that what we are working on when it comes to RPA, and because, you know, bots have the ability to make a lot of updates into a lot of systems, the challenges that we are seeing and working on is making sure that people understand what a bot can do, what it can't do, and ensuring that the data that is being fed to the bot has actually been properly cleaned. Over.
Thank you, Ken. What have you found to be the biggest blockers to implementation for that?
Actually, the biggest blockers we have found so far has been really the data literacy across the enterprise. We have so many, it's when you get so ingrained into a system, you know that system by the data it has, the different data fields, but that doesn't mean you can necessarily communicate that to different stakeholders or to different organizations. So one of the big things we're working on is improving data literacy within the organization. Because for example, how many times do people take a look at results that come in from like a machine learning algorithm? It comes in, it's displayed on Tableau, but the visualization doesn't communicate a good message. So that is some of the areas we're really looking on beefing up so that we can make some better data decisions that are data driven. Over.
So I'm gonna double down on what Ken said. It's definitely the data literacy piece, but it's also process literacy, because understanding the processes themselves and really trying to break that down from a data scientist perspective or an AI engineer perspective is key, because you start to think about the process differently than the worker or the person who is already in that process day to day. And so those conversations between the data scientists and the people who are executing those processes are very key. And then another thing that we've found that is hurting our implementations of these things is access to the data in some of these systems. They don't actually have open APIs to pull the data out that we need. And so that's actually a huge blocker for us. So one of the things that we've been really challenged with is making sure when we acquire these systems, when we build them into our pipelines, that they have open access to the data from an automated perspective, whether it's an API or some other means.
Thank you, Rob. I'm just going to take a couple more questions, because then actually in the last few minutes, I actually have somebody who's going to come and introduce something that ONR is actually pushing and initiating. So this is another question. It seems to be the definition of AI can vary depending on who's talking about it, what it's best used for. Is there a standard definition for what AI means to the Navy? For example, let's say someone wants to use AI to identify software vulnerabilities in the systems. I think because we had talked about some of those vulnerabilities earlier and maybe things getting compromised. So who defines what we're talking about when we say AI? And I think some of you guys in our previous discussions, we were saying that that might be something that might come up, and a few people have liked this question, so just wanted to have it answered.
So,
Well,
yeah, I feel kind of compelled to give you a high level answer here. So for the last year or so, in the leadership levels, we've gravitated in the Navy to the Oxford Dictionary definition of AI. There's 1,000 out there. Everybody knows it. I don't think it's really useful to get wrapped around trying to find one, but the Oxford definition is getting traction within our service and OSD. The theory and development of computer systems capable of tasks usually associated with human intelligence, like computer vision, machine translation, language processing, things like that. I would also add, or take this opportunity to plug that, and going back to the data question, we do have a naval AI taxonomy of 8 different stripes of AI that we're interested in pursuing. And that's important to help level our understanding and across the service in our discussions. But the role of data in each one of those 8 areas, the level of dependency on data is different across all 8. That's very important to recognize. Again, that's why context matters, because a specific problem with a specific type of AI will call for certain quality and volume types of data given the phenomenology. So I would, the taxonomy is out there. It's on the internet. If you Google it, you can find it. It's publicly releasable. And I think it's a useful tool for leveling the discussion and the engagement. So
The definition of AI is difficult to find as being very useful. And you'll find that even the writers of the top textbooks on AI don't even bother trying to define it. The key aspects, one of the key aspects of AI is the concept of a model. Whether it's biological or an artificial agent, AI intelligence takes what we sense in the environment, whatever that environment may be, and whatever sort of sensors we have, and uses that against a model to make decisions about how to achieve goals. And so, as Brett was just saying, based on the types of data that are available, one can develop different kinds of models. And so the type of artificial intelligence that one creates can be very different. Some very quick examples where we've had archived labeled data. We've developed classifiers using supervised learning. For instance, in a program called Navy 311, which utilizes a machine learned model to route trouble reports for help desk sort of efforts. And they train on 3 months of closed tickets and retrain every week in order to be able to keep up with changes in the environment. But where we don't have labeled data, we might have archived data that's unlabeled. We can use unsupervised learning techniques like we've done for RF emitter identification and state classification. But on the other hand, maybe we don't even have that, but maybe we can learn on the fly in the wild, as it's sometimes called, from the actions of the users of a system. And essentially their actions create labels about the situation. And we've done that all the way back in 2010 under the DARPA PAL program in developing systems that would recommend information for different situations to different users based on their previous behaviors. Or maybe as Brett was just pointing out, maybe there isn't much data at all in the situation, but we still want to try to reason against models. And there we can handcraft models based on physics models or engineering specs. And we can use those either simply as the models to make decisions from, or we can actually use them to create simulations that generate data that can be used to train and build other kinds of models. So the type of data that's available is key to understanding what we can do with AI in any particular context or domain. And that can create something that looks very different from one application to another. So one generic definition of AI doesn't always suit.
Thank you, Doug. I really appreciate that. And so we're just about out of time here. I do want to ask this one last question that came in on YouTube. And I do want to let the audience know that we're going to be actually taking these questions and they're going to be sent out to the panelists for them to answer. My coworker, Steve, is going to drop in the chat our website. So you guys will be able to find the list of your questions from YouTube and from Zoom, and going to have the panelists answer them, and then we'll post them on our website within the next few weeks. But the last question is there a place for people to find resources for learning more about AI, becoming an AI developer, or joining other AI initiatives? And that's okay if there isn't like one site that answers all those questions, but if you guys have that, the audience wanted to know.
Well, I know up on this again, I know up on the Fusion site, and it's kind of hosted under NavAir. They have a really nice section that deals with data science, and it also deals with areas with artificial intelligence as well. There's also a lot of work that's being put together by the GSA to kind of build a bigger government community on that. But yeah, I mean, if you want to find a lot of stuff about artificial intelligence, there's courses on Coursera that are just, and you can, if you have access with DAU to get to use Coursera, there's a lot of great classes there. Over.
Thank
I
you.
think the sources are just as widely varied as our definitions, right? We have, 14 panelists here, 14 different definitions of AI, and all the different participants probably have their own definitions as well. I think from my perspective, AI is not just technology, it's culture shift and way of doing things. And so there's lots of aspects about artificial intelligence that you can learn about from everywhere, from the psychological aspects, even machine teaming, the ethical ramifications, especially if you guys are Terminator fans, as well as all the technical aspects in the data science, machine learning type aspects of it.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate this discussion today. I just wanted to extend my gratitude for you guys joining us. Thank you all the panelists again for participating and giving your insight from the different syscoms. I think we had a really good representation here. And so just wanted to say how much the Naval X really appreciate you guys for coming. So now I'm going to hand the baton over to my coworker, Whitney, who is going to introduce the Artificial Intelligence Challenge that's going to be launching soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. And definitely a tough act to follow. Great job, everyone. I just wanted to kind of give you a teaser. So I've been hearing all this stuff about context mattering and the idea for a culture change. One of the things that we find pretty valuable at Naval X is putting kind of an impetus or a single problem on the table for a bunch of teams to solve and come at together. We think it's a really good way to build teams and also a really good way to kind of help us answer those bigger questions, like what data is important, how should we do this? Well, let's put an actual real life project down and give ourselves a timeline to get something done. So we have decided, so working with Brett, OpNav folks, the digital transformation group, as well as, so with N7 as a partner, kind of as the engine for application behind it, working with Naval X as kind of the external partnering side and using our tech bridges and all this other stuff for those who are tracking what we've been doing. But we're really just lining up a one-year challenge to get an AI capability integrated into the fleet. And our goal will be to scale that solution within 18 months. So we are working tomorrow to identify potentially 5 problems that we're going to be looking for help with over the next year. So just letting you know, that's our teaser. NPS will be involved. The same people we're working on Cruiser. We'll be working with the warfare centers. We'll be working with NAVC and other groups. So the whole thought is, can we put our whole force and all of this wonderful knowledge that we've been tracking over some time behind some specific problems and show that we can move faster and really change culture together by working as a team. Brett, do you have anything to add on that?
Nope. Good job, Whitney. Just it's going to be a exciting time where I see this is a part of our educational process, just taking it up a notch, bring it to the next level in a couple very important key areas and getting a bigger part of the team. I think out of the effort, my expectation is we'll make some of the headway on those cultural blockers and as well as delivering capability to the fleet. So I'm pretty excited about it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yep. And the only other thing I'll mention is we're not trying to do anything alone. We'll be reaching out to you. We'll be looking for lessons learned. And we will be trying to take into account the things that the Jake has worked on, like their checklist for AI projects going forward, using the innovation pipeline that our team has developed to really map out the stage, and then also track as we go what we do well and what we, find our blockers we hadn't planned for. So we'll be tracking the entire process as we go and trying to create some metadata, if you will, of how our system reacts to change and you know, new technologies going forward at a speed we haven't typically been moving it along.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Whitney, and thank you, Brett. I just wanted to remind everybody that we're going to take these questions that you have, and if you have questions that you thought about afterwards, because this is going to be posted on YouTube. So go to youtube.com/NavalX. You'll be able to see this replay. And if you have questions, please send them to agility@navy.mil. And as well, if you guys have a few minutes to take the survey we posted in the chat too, just let us know. If you want to hear more of these topics, or if there's any other topics you want NavalX to cover, or any other like big focus areas, you know, just please let us know. But I'm just going to bring over Mohawk Matt for our closing. If he's in here. Well, yeah, well, I mean, I pretty much said the closing, but thank you guys for joining. Thank you, panelists. If you guys have any questions, send them to agility@navy.mil, and be on the lookout for that challenge. So thank you, Whitney, again, and thank you, panelists. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.